Misuse of Drugs Act to commit drug abusers to a drug rehab center, which is administered by the Singapore Prison Service. Drug abusers arrested for the first and second time will be sent for treatment and rehab at a drug rehab center. Committal to a drug rehab center does not amount to a criminal record. And in this drug rehab center, inmates go through both group and individual counseling sessions, both secular and religious, with prison counselors to overcome their addiction issues. SCORE, the Singapore Corporation of Rehabilitative Enterprises. SCORE manages the aftercare services to inmates after they come out from prisons. Some of the inmates are given the opportunities to go to halfway houses prior to their release to smoothen their transition back into society. Sorry. And underpinning our efforts is the need for strong community support. We recognize that community support is vital for us to maintain a zero tolerance against drugs, as well as to maintain the laws against drugs. Allow me to elaborate on CMB's anti-drug strategy. We adopt an integrated and multi-pronged approach in our fight against drugs. This approach involves tough legislation, a high-profile preventive drug education program, vigorous enforcement, and close cooperation with our local and foreign counterparts. All this is aimed at sustaining a national consensus towards zero tolerance on drugs. As a law enforcement agency, CMB derives its powers from various legislation. The primary legislation that we rely on for our work is the Misuse of Drugs Act, MDA for short. The Misuse of Drugs Act is CMB's chief legislation. The MDA was first enacted in 1973. The MDA classifies drugs into three categories, classes A, B, and C, with Class A referring to the most severe drugs. The trafficking of controlled drugs in Singapore could lead to long imprisonment terms, up to 30 years, caning, or even capital punishment, depending on the weight of drugs that a trafficker is arrested with. On this issue of death penalty, I will talk a little bit more in my next slide. The mandatory death penalty was revised and introduced on the 1st January this year, with a discretionary component included. The aim was to provide CMB with more tools to target those higher up in the drug syndicates and to disrupt trafficking networks. What does it entail? The courts will have the discretion whether to impose a life imprisonment sentence if two specific conditions are met. These two conditions are: first, the offender must prove that his role in the offense is restricted only to that of a courier, and he does not play any other role within the drug syndicate. The second condition, the person must have either substantially assisted CMB in disrupting drug trafficking activities, or the person must prove that he's suffering from such abnormality of the mind that impairs his mental responsibility for his act. CMB had also recently put in place new legislative powers to tackle the growing concern brought about by a worsening regional drug situation. First, the trafficking of drugs to young or vulnerable persons, as well as exploiting them for drug activities, will now receive a more severe punishment. Similarly, a person who commits second or subsequent trafficking offense will be liable for harsher punishment. The MDA has also enacted a new schedule to deal with the emergence of new psychoactive substances. These new psychoactive substances mimic the effects of controlled drugs such as amphetamines, such as cannabis, and has the potential to cause as much, if not more harm. This new schedule in the MDA allows CMB to list this substance in the MDA quickly and gives CMB powers to seize these substances, get them off the streets. It will also be an offense to plan for or to arrange for gathering to abuse drugs. This legislation is targeted at persons who facilitate drug abuse, but may not be involved in the supply of drugs. And lastly, CMB has also strengthened its powers in dealing with persons who are based outside of Singapore, but whose actions lead to drug crimes committed within Singapore. On the anti-drug legislation for demand reduction, first and second time abusers who are arrested will be sent for compulsory treatment and rehab in the Drug Rehab Center. This is managed by Singapore Prison Service. Aim of rehab and treatment is to give first and second timers a chance at rehabilitation without the stigmatization of a criminal record. It is never the policy intention to rely solely on tough legislation alone to tackle the drug problem. Singapore takes a holistic approach to the drug problem. It involves not just enforcement, but also preventive education, effective rehab, and aftercare support. After the release from the Drug Rehab Center, the drug abuser is served a supervision order to report for regular urine tests. This urine test serves to deter and detect before they relapse back to drug abuse. Besides urine tests, CMB will also be empowered to take hair from persons suspected of having consumed drugs. Hair analysis will be another means of drug detection. Singapore is not a drug-producing country. The supply of drugs originates from abroad. As a first line of defense to stem the flow of drugs into Singapore, CMB works very closely with our counterparts in joint operations and information exchanges. At the checkpoints, CMB maintains a strong presence, work very closely with our counterparts at the checkpoints, like the immigration and checkpoint authorities and the police, to deter and detect drug trafficking activities. Inland-wise, CMB is also vigorous in sustained inland enforcement action efforts against drug traffickers and abusers. CMB conducts regular island-wide operations with intensive raids to take them out of circulation. Another important component of our enforcement efforts is the active engagement of our foreign counterparts. There is a need for upstream efforts to actively engage our overseas partners. The level of engagement ranges from exchange of information and intelligence to joint investigations to operations. We also collaborate by conducting joint training courses to share best practices and experiences. The focus of CMB's preventive drug education efforts is to reach out to youth 25 years and below, both through our initiatives as well as through collaborations with community organizations working with high-risk youth. Some of the preventive education programs we conduct include school-based activities such as assembly talks, etc. Our community outreach includes conducting workplace talks for young adults, working parents. Our messages are also reinforced at a national level through high-profile activities such as the anti-drug and inhalant abuse campaign. This is a very quick summary of preventive drug education initiatives carried out by CMB. The population is categorized into different segments. The relevant preventive drug education programs are tailored in order to reach out in the best possible manner to the separate audiences. This brings me to the third part of the presentation on the local drug situation. This chart shows a breakdown of drug abusers arrested from 1994 to 2012. The visible outcome of CMB's strategy in tackling drug abuse and supply is a significant decrease in the number of drug abusers arrested across the years. Nonetheless, we are also mindful that there's an increasing trend in the last few years. In 2012, about 3,400 abusers were arrested. In terms of the per 100,000 residential population in Singapore, this works out to about 91 per 100,000 population. Repeat abusers continue to be the majority, making up about 69% of all abusers arrested. This shows the type of drugs abused.
5 minutes, Lem.
Heroin is the main drug of abuse in Singapore. Methamphetamine comes a close second. This is my last part on challenges facing us and what we are going to do to move forward. While the situation is contained, the future is not all rosy. Regional situation is not good. Local situation is affected likewise. Values in Singapore, we see somewhat a big change. To tackle some of these problems, a drug task force was set up in 2011 to conduct a review of our national strategy against drugs. In line with this task force recommendations, CMB has enhanced our strategies in our key mandates of 1, targeted preventive drug education, 2, strong deterrence, 3, upstream intervention for young abusers. Beyond preventive drug education, beyond strong deterrence and drug enforcement, allow me to focus on an upstream intervention which is new to help young abusers. In the area of upstream intervention for young abusers, CMB has put in place a dedicated reporting center for young persons. This is to minimize contamination by experienced drug abusers when they report for supervision. 2, to ensure that young drug abusers are properly rehabilitated and reintegrated back into society, CMB will enhance our supervision regime with compulsory counseling and casework for new young abusers. This is something new, but it's for sure worth the effort. You talked about young abusers. What about those repeat abusers? We believe not all is lost. With these repeat offenders, repeat abusers, we have also worked with prisons to roll out an enhanced scheme for these repeat abusers. This will also include counseling and casework, working with the family, drawing in community resources, community support, equipping them with practical life skills for reintegration back into society. In conclusion, we have gone through Singapore's anti-drug strategy. We have seen the Singapore's drug situation. Lastly, we have seen what are the challenges, how do we move forward. The drug scene is dynamic, evolving. Things do not stay too long the same. There is a continued need to work closely with our community partners to forge strong and continued societal support for a zero-tolerance policy against drugs. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your kind attention. I wish you a most rewarding symposium. Thank you.
Thank you, Lem. Our next speaker from Spain, Eloy Quiroz. Mr. Quiroz, he is the Commissar Chief of Central Unit of Drugs and Organization Crime of the National Police in Spain. Mr. Quiroz has more than 35 years experience of combating drugs in Spain. With this, I will leave it to Mr. Quiroz. Please.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Well, with me is the Inspector Chief, Alberto Morales. He's Operative Chief in the cocaine section in Madrid. Only a few words. First of all, thank you to the organization for inviting us to participate in this symposium. It's a pleasure to be here in this country. We want to show all of you the specific problematic of Spain in organized crime and in drugs, and what we are going to fight against criminal organizations. The strategic position of Spain between America, Europe, and Africa have made the most frequently area used for international drugs trafficking from South America, cocaine, and North Africa hash. Now, I'm sorry because my English is not so good. Really, my English is very bad. Then I'm going to continue, Mr. Morales. Shukran.
So, thank you. Well, like Mr. Oloye explained all of you, we want to present the Central Unit of Drugs and Organized Crime is the unit that he is the chief and the commissioner. You can see that we have 3 brigades. One of them is special for narcotics and include all the drugs that you can find in Spain. The second brigade is of organized crime, and the third brigade is special things that we will talk during the presentation. This is our base is in Madrid, but we have several groups in the whole country, and of course these 3 special teams is called Greco. As you can see, we have to take previous considerations about the situation of Spain, and the 2 drugs that we have mainly in Spain is hashish and, of course, cocaine. But before to beginning the conference, what I want to explain all of you is the problem, the first problem. All the morning we were talking about drug abuse and prevention. This is the first step that we have to consider, the consumption of illicit drugs in Spain during the last 20 years. We transform our country like a transit country to a consume country. We are now at the first position in Europe in consume of drugs, mainly cocaine. We are not proud of this, of course. You consider it's a big problem for us, the country. But in any case, we try to resolve the problem not only with prevention, but with this action, the action that our Chief Quiroz try to collaborate with us. The second thing that I have to explain all of you is as you can see, the geographical position or localization. This is important because we are very close for Morocco. We have another thing, very important thing, the language for Spanish, and from the South American, it's very easy to come here to Spain and try to collaborate with the criminal organizations. And the third point that we want to explain is the evolution of the local or international organizations. In Spain, we receive all the criminal organizations that you can imagine, from the British in the south of Spain, from Morocco. We have all the cost, so we have several positions that we have to comment. The first problem is hashish. This is, as you can read here, the most widely consumed drug in Spain and in the world. We don't have the problem of the illegal cultivation. It's at domestic level, and this is aimed at self-consumption or financing the cultivation. But it's not, as you can see here, the illegal cultivation there in Spain. The most widely used form is transport, like the cocaine by sea. They use the ferries that connect Spain to Morocco to introduce the lorries with the drugs. And of course, we are in the first position too in the quantity seized of hashish at the world. We represent, as you can see here, the 33%, but in Europe, more than 70%. This share will repeat in cocaine, as you can see now, because it's the second drug consumed in Europe, and in Spain with Portugal, we are considered, and this is a problem, we are the gate to Europe with the shipments and containers from South America, from the neighbors countries of Bolivia, Peru, Colombia, to the Holland, Belgium, and the north of Europe, but mainly to Spain, because they always stop in the Spanish ports and then continue the travel. Of course, we are in the rank at the first positions in Europe, and in the world we are in the 7th position. The most important thing is we detect that we change the organization. The criminal organization in Spain changed because they beginning like a grandfather that tried to control several groups that working in Spain. Now disappear this option. Now there are several groups, small groups that offer the possibility to traffic, and this is the main problem that we have. We have to adapt or work to these several groups that they are connected and try to work with less quantity but more times than in the past. The most common form of transport is, like you can see here, boats and containers, and the port of Valencia is the main port. Later on, when we talk about containers, you can see where is exactly Valencia and why is one of the best ports for trafficking for the organizations. This is only a graphic to recognize that we are in the first position in Europe during the years 2005 to 2010. This first part of the presentation, I am going a little faster because we want to stop in the operative area that we try to do in my unit. This is the price. Why I introduce this slide? Because it's very important to know exactly how they get the profits of the cocaine trafficking. Because if you can see in Colombia, it's no more than $6,000 per kilogram. And in Spain, you can see the price is 34,000 euros. And this price is more or less the last 5 years. And it's a big profit for each kilogram. And the other thing that I wanted to explain to all of you is how they change the way to traffic in Spain. They beginning with the vessels with loads that approach more or less 1,000 kilograms, 500 kilograms to 1,000 kilograms. But now they change to the containers. It's very easy. The reason is the risk. They diversify the risk, and it's safety for the criminal organization to traffic with containers than vessels. They don't have to load and deliver the drug, even in origin and in Spain. We continue with the international cooperation, because when we are talking about drug trafficking, we don't have to think like a country. We have to think like a community, and we have to be partners of the different countries that are working this fight. This is the organized criminality suppose and a strategic threat of which no country is invulnerable to his action and effects, and any country could approach and resolve alone this problem. This is very important, and during the presentation I'll try to insist in this idea. When we finish this symposium, you will have a lot of contacts here, emails, telephone numbers, anytime, any situation that you need all collaboration, and I think I'm talking about all the European delegation here, we have the telephone number. Please call us. We want to collaborate with everyone, every place. Why these criminal organizations are so, they grow so faster, and they have this enough resources, because they have more personal and material resources. We are in Spain in a crisis, a very important crisis, economic crisis, but in any case, they don't have any problem. Perhaps they don't have effective money like in the past, but they have a lot of money. They have more than 100 lawyers working for them. When we have to the prosecutor and try to talk to collaborate for the projects, we have a lot of problems there with the lawyers. They try to look for any problem to go down with the case. Of course, they are working not only in drug trafficking. The second thing that you have to understand is the money laundering. Is the way that you try to push these organizations. Perhaps you seize a lot of loads of cocaine, but you have to work in the money laundering because it's so important, or more important than, sometimes than the traffic. Of course, international and transnational, we don't have to put limits to our work, please. Don't put it because at the future you can try to get connections or networks, workings with other police forces. Try to do it. Try to connect with us and the different forces. And we will try to work. Don't forget that we have several legal systems, but we try to adapt. We try, really. Of course, the use of violence in Spain is not so high, this problem, but it's beginning to appear. Some violence inside the organizations, not with others, but between these different organizations and inside these organizations. And of course, the negative influence of the system and in the society. This is why you have to consider this an obligation. It's not an option, really. It's not an option. It's not possible to fight alone in this drug trafficking. You need the rest of the countries. You have some institutions that you can collaborate, of course. I try to introduce some of them, and some tools that you can use if, later on, because we don't have perhaps enough time to talk about all of them, but you have some of them here. Other tools that you can use is extraditions, undercovers, operations. We have here the colleagues of German. We work a lot with them. We're beginning in Spain to work with undercover unit. It's growing day per day, but it's a special tool, and we have to take care with that. Monetary deliveries, international regulatory commissions, transborder surveillance, joint investigations teams. Our neighbors in Spain are Portugal and France. All the weeks we receive the calls, an email, require any detail about a bad guy, a car, a plate, or whatever you need, a picture of some Spanish or bad guys or belong to any organization, criminal organization. We are open to collaborate with this. And of course, this is the work that we every day try to do. It is the fourth section. This is the section that I belong. This is a cocaine section. We only work cocaine, but sometimes appear different drugs, several drugs, but we try to work only cocaine. This is the origin of the information. I'm not going to stop so much here, but I want to talk about the routes, because all the time we are talking about the new routes and the different routes that you can find in Europe and about the traffic, cocaine traffic. We are going to resume in these three routes. This is our experience. You can consider that we assault in the last 10 years more or less 100 vessels with cocaine. So you can imagine, and this is only the national police. There are several forces, but the national police, more than 100 vessels with a lot, you can see later on, of cocaine. The north of the route is through the Caribbean and the Azores, and go to Portugal and Spain. They use this route in most of the cases for pleasure boats. So the crew are European. They introduce some cases as women, but not so many times. Two or three sailors, no more. And then you can pass to the central route. This is a more specific route. They call the fishing boats because they try to go to Spain through Africa and Canarias, and this is the fishing boats that they use to load the drugs and continue to Europe. They could stop in Cape Verde or whatever they need to continue with the traversing. And of course, the south route is go directly to Africa. We have a lot of intelligence, evidence that they are working in Africa, but only a few cases that we detect how they transport the cocaine from Africa to Europe. Only a few cases. We try to work all the time, the whole time in maritime drug traffic, include cocaine, and this is the several files that you can find or work. This is pleasure boats, fishing boats, containers, fast boats, and regular lines. We stop in fast boats because unfortunately, we have a very specialist organizations in the north of Spain, in Galicia. These organizations are how do you say, they could introduce the cocaine, and we don't have enough tools to stop in some cases. Then they are faster, they know the coast, and they introduce a very quantity of drugs every year in Spain. This is a little resume of the kilograms of cocaine that we seized in the last years. Like you can see here, the last year in 2012, we seized more than 80,000 kilograms of cocaine. It's only to know exactly why we have this problem of abuse of cocaine. And this is some of the examples of the vessels that we seized and the numbers of vessels during the years. This year, we seized one vessel and with a load of 2,000 kilograms of cocaine inside.
5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. This is an example. There are two colleagues from Bulgaria here, and when we want to explain here is only that they load 3,000 kilograms of cocaine, but this is what we really work at, about the route, the intelligence that we could do when we arrest these guys. You can see here, this is difficult to read, but if you have time, and I suppose that all of you get the presentations, you can see here the channel, the codes, how they communicate, how they have to approach the two vessels. This is information that the captain has when we arrest him and we search in the vessel, inside the vessel. And this is the most important information that you get for the future, not only for teach to the young people, young police. It's important for us to know how they work and why they choose this route or this other route. Like every organization, they get the load in the south of Spain. This is Bulgarian, and they have to prepare another deliver to be safe with this cocaine. And this is very usual. You are talking about the network, the internet, and the future, and the connectings, but they continue using this alphabetic case that to transfer the position, the telephone numbers, all the cases appear this alphabetic case. It's only used to collaborate between them. They could give a position in the sea or a telephone number or whatever you want. Very fast container. You have here the main ports in Spain. I saw the outside the incredible presentation that the guests show us, but you have here some example that we could find in Spain. As you can see, it's double phones. This is all of these containers come from South America. You got here packings. This is a bananas container. You can see here food products, octopus, soaps, scrap. Good. As you can see, there are similar appearance like you have here outside. Stone, personal effects, and blink hook. This is they always appear in Spain. From Panama and from Colombia, we have a lot of cases, and more now in República Dominicana than the rest of the countries. This is the last year, only the frequency of the routes in the last year for containers. Okay. So I try to conclude in these 3 minutes that I have. This is why I'm going to insist in this. The cooperation is not an option, it's an obligation. I love Formula One, and this is a team, and we have to participate in this team. Please try to do it, to add efforts and to unit wills. This is the 3 pillars that you have to consider: trustworthy, generosity, and speed. This is the only way to work in drug trafficking. There is no other option. These foundations are the keys necessary and effective understanding to date and to create offsets between the different police forces. Limits do not exist for the criminal organization, so limits must not exist for the police collaboration. I am going to repeat this before to finish. There are no problems to collaborate with all of us. It's not important whether you seize the drug, but we have to arrest in every country. There are 2 organizations. For the future, this is, we are going talking about the prevention, and this is what the headlines that our minister tried to do to sign us and to continue with this. But in prevention, this is the most important, education. This is what in Spain we are trying to do, and we insist too much in this education program, okay? And of course, when we are talking about the 4 Cs, this is what the 4 points that we are trying to follow in the central unit drugs. Is control the borders and coastline. We don't have enough time to talk about the program and the system that we have in the coast of Spain to control illegal immigration and drug trafficking. Of course, more resources for law enforcement specialization. I am going to insist one more in money laundering. The legal reforms, we introduced a reform about the difference between organization, group, and association. It's important for us because high the penalty for the criminals, and of course, collaboration and cooperation. Please try to resume this conference in these 3 Cs, the receipt of the 3 Cs: collaboration, coordination, and cooperation. It's an obligation, please. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Last but not least, our final speaker is Mr. Franz Lang from Austria. Mr. Lang is the Deputy Director General for Public Security, and he is the head of Criminal Intelligence Service in Austria. He is the head of the cabinet of the Minister of the Interior, and currently he is, in addition to his official assignment, he is a lecturer and trainer, especially for organization and strategy development and other crime defending matters within a wide scope of police education institutes and international projects. With this, I will leave it to Mr. Lang to present his slides. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's an honor for me, and it's a big task for me to keep you on your chairs on the last lap this day before you run for the lunch. I hope I'm able to keep you on the chair, if possible vertically. But if somebody wants to escape, don't fear, I don't throw anything after him or shoot after him. I'm sure the chairman doesn't do. But it must be time to say many thanks, and I'm really impressed about the organization. General His Excellency Othman and his teams are perform a highly professional work here. Many thanks. I changed my slides 1 hour ago just to give you about 10 minutes our experience on one issue, how to train our investigators, how to train our analysts to think and to plan and to operate across borders, because we had to learn it very hard. And when His Excellency General Othman visited us in Vienna, we were very close talking about those the ability of our police forces to operate across borders. And when talking with him and talking to him, I soon realized that I was thinking in a small European area, and he was thinking on the global area, on the transcontinental cooperation, because the position of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in this area is another one than the small Austria is. But we made our experience, and he asked me just to present it. For many centuries, we had 2 blocks in Europe. You remember, I think, this was the Western and the Eastern, the Communist bloc, and it was a rather comfortable thing for police. We had a very effective border control on the east side, like our German colleagues had, and it was not so much work for us to police here or to investigate here or to even think of people or criminals or criminal phenomena coming across the border, especially from the east. Now we have another situation. Austria is a land only with land borders, and the land borders are not any more controlled. So that people, millions of goods cross the border day and night. And of course, police has to radically change its strategies, its performance, its thinkings, its educations, its trainings, and so on. We had to learn for about 5 to 10 years really to get a routine in transborder operations. And now, I think the last 2 or 3 years, for example, we seize more stolen goods and arrest more people by our agents in cooperation with the neighborhood police forces outside our country than inside our country. So it was a real change of strategic planning and operations. And I was asked just to talk about our experience. We are very critical to some strategies developed in Brussels for police cooperation, because what they are doing, the European Union is enlarging. That means that more and more countries are coming into the European Union, coming into the Schengen area, have to decrease their border contacts, and in a certain future they will also be in the borderless, border control-less situation. But what does the European Union do? It's making enlargement and training programs for the new countries and the police forces in the new countries with typical topics for police schools, for traditional police schools. For example, that Swedish or Austrian police school trainers come to Serbia, and they're talking about organized crime there. The pupils in Serbia know much more about organized crime than the Austrian or Swedish police officers, or maybe Portuguese. But at the moment, they don't lose any words about how to plan, how to operate in transport issues. And this must be a very, very crucial change in training and in strategic development. For example, in Serbia, we had about 50 European Union financed projects, millions of euros, to build up their police forces, to give them a modern European structure, to make their performance on the European, on the Western state of the art. But they are still focused in working within their borders. Whenever they have to go across the border for 200 meters or 500 meters or 3 kilometers, they are often out of operation. Because the last control to delivery 2 years ago with our colleagues from Serbia, we recognized that their surveillance team, when they crossed the border to the Hungarian area, they even had no roaming partners for the mobiles, and the signals didn't work anymore. So they had many, many, many trainings, but no training in how to really operate with police forces across the border. And this, we have new programs and new strategies with our partner police forces, especially in the Balkans, in the Western Balkans area, where most of the drug transporting via the Balkan route is coming up to Austria. We adjust the port to the Central and Western European area to handle and to decrease police. What we have to do and to think is on every police level, even on the local police level, especially for the investigators on the district police level, of course on the federal police level, to think, to plan, and to operate across borders. There's no more investigation in Austria at the moment which is concentrated within our borders. Most of the investigation lead each Austrian police officer officer across the border to our neighbor countries, to the Balkans, and so on. What we worked out is a new procedure completely out of the typical police school and police academies trainings issues, is that we developed together with Europol and together with our, for example, with our German colleagues from the German PK, a state-of-the-art how to work across borders, a state-of-the-art how to take samples, for example, DNA, all over Europe, because whenever we are working or operating cross-border, we have to take the evidences picked up in those countries by our friends together, shoulder on shoulder, with our police officers. We have to bring them to an Austrian court or to a court elsewhere, and it has to be accepted that the evidences have to be brought up on a certain state of the art, on a certain level. And then, when we have worked out the state of the art, there are must needs, there are nice to have needs, and there are need to have needs. We cross-check them with our new partners in the Western Balkans, also in the Eastern area, and work out a state-of-the-art with them together. And then before we are going in a real-time operation, we mostly pick up routine by tabletop exercises. Then, after this tabletop exercise, going to real cross-border operation, shoulder on shoulder. After the operation, it's analyzed how the things worked, which lacks of cooperation we have recognized, and then we report it to the European Union and to Brussels just to plan trainings, especially on those gaps we have recognized. That means that it's needed a certain trust between police officers from several countries involved. That's clear. Trust is the most important thing among us, because it's needed that all the investigators, it's needed that all the agents producing intelligence and working out operations are part of the team in your country, in the other country, and so on. They, for example, they listen together to the records of the wiretapping, of course. Maybe there are agents of 3 or 4 countries listening to those records. And many colleagues in Europe are asking us, what's about corruption within the police? Do you trust them? There's no way around to trust them, and it's the best training, the best anti-corruption training when the criminals on the wires talking about the performance of the police at home, and you have the police officers of their home and say, hey, this is your feedback. Yeah? Listen to the feedback they offer to you. And so we have, until now, very good experiences in working out those cross-border operations. Why those cross-border operations? In Europe had many countries, many smaller countries, and almost all the criminal organizations, especially those of drug trafficking, have spread out their activities through several countries. So there is a training in this country, there's a producing in falsificate travel documents or transportation documents in these countries. Their money is stored in another country, and the management is sitting here and the communication center is sitting there. And you have to work out, we call it mirror operations, that operations at the same moment, at the same minute, are going on maybe in 4, 5, 6 countries with the same operational plan, with the same focused on certain people, on certain things to be saved. And this works when it is trained well, when it is planned well, and when a certain level of trust is built, a certain agreement, state-of-the-art of instruments you use during the operation, and methods you use during the operations. Just to give you another example, we all know what intelligence work concerning drug trafficking, big drug trafficking organizations means. That means almost 2 or 3 years of surveillance, of other types getting informations, of a very experienced analyze work. And we do, until now, or until 3 or 4 years ago, we did it in every country by every police force separated.
5 minutes, Franz.
5 minutes?
5 minutes.
Okay. And since we have an agreement, have a certain state-of-the-art of using how to use our instruments and how to have common methods, we are very, very quick and very, very fast in those analysis work. We save many, many hours and much budget in just coordinating all the analysis work of 3, 6, 7, 8 countries and get more quicker and faster in our operational area. So this is the topic I wanted to talk to you, and whenever it's needed to have more information about that, you have my address and you have the address of the Austrian Criminal Intelligence Service. We are open to share any information, also in this strategy, also in our experience in developing methods of common cross-border performance, just to get routine in working out cross-border performance. This is our last drug operation. There were within the work of about 2 weeks and 2 nights of operation, there were 750 suspects arrested in 7 countries of Europe and countries of the Western Balkans. It was an organization where the management sat in Macedonia and in Albania and in Serbia, and they spread out their heroin, delivering all over half Europe. They were able to kick out the Nigerian connection out of Vienna, for example, and out of Frankfurt within half a year or within about 4 months. And this was with the system I introduced to you, the last operation, the last result. So due to the time, many, many thanks. It's a great honor to be here. I give back the floor to the chair. Many thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. We have time for questions and comments. Please.
Mr. Chairman, sir, mine is not a question. It's more of an observation and a request. I totally agree with my colleague from Spain. International cooperation is not an option. It's an obligation and an urgent requirement. And it is at these symposiums where we come and make new friends, we meet new people. And we hope that the cooperation will improve and increase. Not only we need for operational intelligence, the network is so vast every time it involves a number of countries. We need contact points in other countries. We need to talk, we need to inform. But secondly, there's also the aspect of sharing of technology. Technology in terms of interdiction efforts. So often we are getting products from Europe and other parts of the world, and we are wasting a lot of time on field trials. If we had contact, say, with Spain or Germany, we could put a query to them and gain time and get on to the right technology. So may I request, if possible, if you could take the initiative here in the symposium of at least all the countries who are participating, putting their nodal officers' emails and telephone numbers as far as the enforcement agencies are concerned, so that we can tomorrow talk to each other. Thank you.
Well, I think that's a noble request, but I'm not going to comment on it. I will leave one of the speakers, probably the Spain, will address it.
Yeah. Allow me to answer. Yeah, it's a good answer for to collaborate in the future. I think in all the presentation at the end you have all the emails of the colleagues from Germany, Austria, and Spain. But in any case, if you want, you could request to the organization to try to make a timetable with the contacts, telephone numbers, emails, and of course we are open to collaborate in anything you need. Okay.
Any question? Please.
شكرا سيد الرئيس على إعطائي هذه الفرصة. أود أن أسأل عن 3 مواضيع متداخلة في التجارب التي قدمت أمامنا، وهي حقيقة مفيدة جدا، لكن من وجهة نظري الشخصية هناك 3 مواضيع متداخلة في مجال مكافحة المخدرات. النقطة الأولى هي عمليات مكافحة غسيل الأموال، وأيضا مكافحة الفساد خاصة في أجهزة إنفاذ القانون والأجهزة الأخرى التي تساعد في المكافحة. أيضا مكافحة الإجرام المنظم خاصة في مجال السلاح والتهريب والإتجار بالبشر، لأن الهدف الأساسي لهذه العصابات الإجرامية هو الحصول على المال. فكيف نجفف هذا المال الذي يتداول، خاصة أن هناك بعض الواجهات والشركات الوهمية التي يتعامل من خلالها هؤلاء المهربين للمخدرات والسلاح وتهريب البشر، خاصة ما يعرف بالشركات متعددة الجنسيات. شكرا جزيلا.
شكرا.
Thank you for the question. I think the things are going better because the organization to seize money and to control the fluid of amounts of money and so on the international level are more and more performing in the well direction. In most countries, as I recognize, it's still a topic of legislation. You're absolutely right that criminal assets are within days distributed in other countries and stored there. And the more we get routine in working together, be fast and efficient than our criminal opposites, we will coming to the bank savings, to their houses. The most important thing besides the legislation and the international contracts is the building up trust. But after arresting thousands of people the last years, and recognizing the feedback on the wiretaps, on the phones of them, I would say it's much more worthy to seize their assets than to arrest soldiers. And this is the reason that our planning, our strategy planning, is much more focusing on the assets. First on the assets, and second on the arrests. Thank you.
Our last question, if there is any
لو
question,
سمحت هنا
please. تفضل.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalam ala Rasulullah. And my appreciation is extended to the distinguished panelists with the information that they have provided us today. And also my gratitude to the Ministry of Interior, represented by the Directorate of Anti-Drug and Narcotic Directorate in Saudi Arabia. My question to Mr. York of Singapore, and I know he mentioned something about legislation. Is there anything in legislation that covers government officials or political figures from a standpoint of drug abuse screening or testing? Maybe this is not common worldwide, but I have a feeling if this were to happen, maybe the first place it would happen would be Singapore. My question to Mr. Hoffman of Germany and also the gentleman from the delegate, the Spanish delegate, all this effort is appreciated. And the amount of quantities that have been seized of these poisonous drug substances. My question is, what is, in your estimate, and also this question is also directed to our delegates from also Austria. What percentage is this of what is worldwide available? Are you detecting and seizing 20%, 30%, 80%? Is there some estimate? Because I think the gentleman from India, in his comment, I think I agree with his point of view. There must be a worldwide collaboration, and with the Spanish delegate, that it is a world obligation. And unless we know the size of this threat, so even our Saudi anti-drug directorate effort is very immense, and we always hear week after week arrests and seizures of large quantities, and they are very appreciative of their efforts, of their men and women who extensively put their lives in the line of danger. And the question is, but how humongous is this? So in order to go ahead and go with the recommendation of the gentlemen from India and Spain. And thank you very much.
Mr. York.
Thank you for your question. I take it to mean legislation with regards to government official. Is there transparency? Are there integrity issues? In short, who police the police? Am I right to understand that, please, sir? Thank you. Well, in response to this issue, first, in the eyes of the law, all are equal. Second, when a government official is found guilty, we have seen by track record that the punishment is more harsh, because in a seat of public office, a commission of an offense warrants something a bit more severe, something harder. And we're talking about legislation. Beyond legislation, that is also that issue of governance. Like I said, who police the police? Internal audit, inter-department audit, inter-ministry audit, for example. All these are such examples of measures with regards to this issue. Thank you.
Mr. Hoffman.
Yes, so I agree with you, of course, that the seizures which are made in a year are only a little slice of the whole amount which is delivered and which is dealt with, of course. And as we have some statistics, of course, of the drug users, and so we can, at least concerning certain drugs, we can say that there must be a use of a certain drug amount, at least in Germany, all in all. And compared to the amount of the seizures, we can say that about maybe 10% or even less of this are seized. That's a figure that is not quite very big, of course, but yeah, that's the thing I can say. Thanks.
Mr. Lang, you want to add something?
I think the best number says UNODC. This case, we in Austria, we are less than 10%, of course, because we are a drug transition country from the Balkans, from the Middle East area into Western Europe. It's a poor situation for a strategic planner. You are right. Yes.
Okay, before we close, I have, two announcements. Of course, the first is everybody is invited for the lunch after we close this session. And the second announcement is there will be social activities at Al-Adriya at 5 o'clock. I think there will be some arrangement at the reception of the shuttle. Once again, I would like to thank our distinguished speakers, Mrs. Christine Albert from Germany, Mr. Michael Hoffman from Germany, Mr. Lem Ziyok from Singapore, and Mr. Eloy Quiros from Spain, and Mr. Franz Lang from Austria. I'd like to thank everybody. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. اسمحوا لنا في دقيقتين أن نتقدم بجزيل الشكر لسعادة رئيس الجلسة سعادة الدكتور محمد بن عبد العزيز النافع. وبهذه المناسبة يسر اللجنة العلمية تكريم سعادته. يتقدم سعادة اللواء سليمان الغزي رئيس اللجنة العلمية بتقديم الدرع التذكاري بهذه المناسبة.